Morning. Welcome to the Friday edition of me going live. My name is Tara, if we haven't met before. I'm a Christian white homeschool mom of 10 kids with one more on the way. And I do this 3 times a week to help other moms embrace the blessing of children with joy and confidence. And I do that because the story, if you haven't heard it before, is I was not at all prepared for motherhood or in any way excited or committed to having a big family. That's a whole journey. Actually, I've shared that journey in my upcoming book, which I'll tell you more about later, because it's a really beautiful God story of how he brought me from a place of intense, paralyzing fear and confusion over what the scriptures say and how to really a blessing from God. Because everybody I knew controlled their family size one way or another. And it was just like a really sensitive topic and a really confusing topic for me. So obviously my life has changed with, 10 in the house and 1 more on the way. Children in the 2 main areas, which would be in your heart and in your home. So last month we did a whole month-long challenge of get your house in order without stressing out, because a lot of moms, especially like if you have 2 kids, 3 kids, that can feel like a lot. So it's not like you have to have a competition with me for who has the most kids or anything. But being a mom of many is kind of relative. I remember what it was like having 3 under 3 and 5 under 5 and trying to keep my house in order. So I've shared a lot of tips and tricks about that, and all that content is saved in the guide section. If that's something you want to check out, you're catching this later, or you just need a reboot to get some part of your house in order, especially now that it's August and it's back to school soon. Talked about that in my live on Wednesday, because back to school for some is like, oh my gosh, counting down. Back to homeschool for other moms, if you homeschool like I do, it's a completely different game, and you can have mixed feelings about it. Like some moms are super chirpy and excited. Other moms are feeling disorganized and overwhelmed on that. I completely understand, and I'm here for you. If you want to connect, share in the comments below. If you are back to homeschool or back to school, feel free to reach out for some support, because I've walked that road of back to homeschool and having mixed feelings about it and feeling a bit, alone and isolated and unsure. And it's a journey, right? Especially if you're kind of newer to homeschooling. But honestly, even if you're kind of a veteran and you've been in it for more than 10 years now, it still is an emotional journey to gear up, right? So today I want to talk about another thing that us moms, whether you have 3 or more, can deal with, but especially if you've committed to be a stay-at-home mom for a prolonged season, such as moms who've committed to have a big family. And if you've embraced that already and you're walking it out, whether you're kind of at the younger end of that or you're a little bit later in the journey as I am, because my oldest is now 16 and my youngest is 18 months, it can be a road and you can contend with a lot of people's opinions. What I like to humor CEOs, other people's opinions. You probably already know, if you've committed to have a big family and you now have broken the social mold of 3 or more kids, you're going to run into other people's opinions. Like it or not, people just blurt, and we live in a time where there's not a lot of restraint in people sharing their, just literally the thought that's going through their mind right at that moment, right? Another talk for another day of teaching people social manners. My own children. So I have encountered other people's opinions when it comes to their, not particularly my fear, I'll talk about it. They have a fear that I might lose myself in motherhood. I've heard this echoed in some other forums of like big family moms groups that I'm part of, and kind of like hanging out in a cafe and just listening in on the conversations around you. It's something I hear that other moms deal with, that people around them, whether it's their mom or their mother-in-law or even a good friend. I'm talking about Christian women. Hearing directly people come to them and say, I'm worried that you might lose yourself in motherhood because, you're staying home with all these kids and they're little and you don't really do anything else other than plan which park you're going to go to today. Or if you're, kids have gotten a little older now, they're school aged, and perhaps you've committed like I have to be a homeschool mom. And if you're committed to homeschooling and have a big family, like you do the math, you're going to be in this for the rest of your sort of like professional lifetime, the lifetime you could have spent if you hadn't had all these kids or had chosen to send them off to school. Not knocking that choice. I'm just saying people are like, well, if you weren't committed to homeschooling plus a big family, oh, think of all the things you could have done, right? Dr. Zeus style. Oh, the wonderful things you could do, the places you could go, the money you could make. And I'm not really particularly knocking the places you could go and the money you could make, but I am saying for someone who's committed to be a stay-at-home homeschooling big family mom, that can be an unhelpful statement when someone comes to you, especially if they're close to you, like your mom. Sorry, mom. Or it's okay. She doesn't really catch these things. She's not even on Facebook. So I feel comfortable sharing some stuff. And I will do, my part to be discreet and to respect other people's privacy, of course. But I'm sharing this more personally because I've walked it. In fact, I even remember having a conversation with someone who shall remain nameless, who literally said to my face, I couldn't believe they said it with a straight face, and they absolutely meant it. They said, I could never have as many kids as you do. I only had 4 at the time. And she's like, I literally would slit my throat. I mean, what do you say? Right? Like, literally, what do you say to that? I said nothing because I was like, oh my gosh, that's like, do you even hear yourself? Just no comment. Just a second, someone's calling for me. Yeah, as soon as I finish talking to my friends, I'll put it on. Yeah, I'm talking to my friends right now, but when I'm done, I'll put it on, okay? Yeah, I'm going to keep going now. Will you wait for me to be done? Why are you talking to your friends on a screen? Because this is how I'm doing it. Please, can I have some space to finish? Thanks. I'll let you know I'm done. Okay, thanks. About 10 minutes. Oh, you want me to call you done? Okay, I'll call you when I'm done. We'll see how long that really lasts. She has no concept of time. Where was I? Right. So she was going to slit her throat. And I was like, oh my gosh. Other people have not been so dramatic and just basically have insinuated you're going to lose yourself. Like, how could you possibly be content, satisfied, fulfilled, a whole woman as a stay-at-home homeschooling big family mom? They don't get it. And I also get how they don't get it, because view of the time in history that we're living in right now. I mean, you could really go back to the Garden of Eden on this if you really wanted to trace this back. But just thinking of like the 70s, I was born in 1978, so I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and like my mom went back to work, and it was a complete cultural social revolution has really ramped up since that time. If you kind of like me are a bit of a geek and nerd when it comes to history and understand the times we're living in, and certainly homeschooling has really motivated me to be more aware of history and engaged, and way more interesting than I did in high school. When I went to public high school, it was really dry and boring and just facts and dates. So yeah, we're living at the like end of a third wave of feminism, which has brought, in my opinion, some good, and also probably a whole heck of a lot more of confusion, because it wasn't particularly grounded in biblical principles. So a lot of women have just literally never seen stay-at-home motherhood in a positive light. We're also living in an age of mass divorce, right? So it's just like living in a wasteland where marriage, motherhood, big family motherhood is in low view. No, there's so few examples, even in like church communities today, unless you might be in a pocket, because they exist, of where big family homeschooling, stay-at-home motherhood is in really like a high regard, is esteemed. Challenging to contend with that. And I've admittedly in my early years as a mom, when I first started to face all that they were being so open in telling me their fears, and like I just had no resources, no skill set. I had no preparation for how to handle those conversations. So I really just defaulted to what I do when I don't know what to do, which is I freeze. I just stay quiet, eyes kind of, bugging open, eyebrows going up. And I was like, okay. Because here's the deal. On one hand, it kind of did touch a doubt, like a seed of doubt that was in my heart. And I was like, what if? What if I do lose myself in my motherhood? What if I do waste my life and all my talent and resources and energy? Oh, the things I could have done, the careers I could have smashed. I mean, every job that I had prior to being married, I mean, I was killing it. I was quickly moving up the ranks of management because that's just, I don't know, how God made me and the family I was blessed to grow up in, that I'm just a go-getter and confident. I'm maybe being 6 foot tall and growing up with a salesman dad had something to do with it. But I know I could have made a 6-figure career. So it was challenging, if you heard a bit of my backstory, for me to give that all up for the sake of Christ, the way I saw it when he really challenged me. When my twins were just 5 months old and I had 3 under 3, and God started to really, churn up my heart with, will you trust me? Will you trust me with your family size? Which I didn't even want to have that conversation with God. And then once we did cross that bridge of fear and we did surrender all, including my womb, to God, and said, okay, then I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom until menopause. I mean, God willing, and assuming there's not any massive, serious medical complications, I'm going to be a professional career mom. And we chose to homeschool a couple years later. And that idea that I was wasting my life, I was going to lose myself, it kind of nagged at me, because when other people would suggest it, the truth was it hit something in me that was already there in the first place. And that had to get dealt with, because otherwise it was, how seeds are, right? They're going to grow. And if you just try to pretend this isn't happening, it's only a matter of time before it all kind of pops up on you under a moment of, or a season of stress. So I did eventually, I don't remember like a particular time. It was probably just a bunch of things happened. And I think it was probably around 5 under 5, because that's when we went from like, oh, you must have missed your vasectomy appointment, to, oh, you're one of those families. This is when we like maxed out of a minivan and started to have to think about bigger, uncool, unsexy vehicles like that. Not that a minivan is particularly sexy, but you know what I mean. When we hit 5 under 5, that's when people were like, oh, you're that kind of family. Well, have fun with that. I'd rather slit my throat. Not everybody thought that, and nobody does think that, but some people do. And some people have the temerity to just let that fall into their mouth without even attempting to, maybe restrain themselves. So if you've encountered that and it's touched your heart in a kind of disturbing way, don't know what to say, or you're tempted to say something that was a real zinger, maybe, as I have been, think of some snarky remark back to them to just shut them up and put them in their place. It's only my Christian virtue that's held me back from kind of tearing some people's heads off sometimes, especially in like the grocery line. We're like, who the hell are you to me? I mean, honestly, please be quiet. I'm just trying to get my groceries done with my 4 children. When we crossed that line and I realized I needed to deal with stuff in my heart, I did. And I needed to go to the Word of God to really reorient my brain and be like, why am I doing this? Why am I wasting my life and losing myself in motherhood and homeschooling big family? Is this a curse or is this a blessing? Is this a sentence or is this a calling? And I had to go to that place with God and really settle the matter, because that's what's given me ultimately the courage and the what it takes to persevere in the storms of life, in difficult pregnancies, in family crisis, in the good times, the easy times, in the long run, right? Because it keeps going for years. I'm at a place now when some people do give this unsolicited opinion of big family. It doesn't even affect me anymore. I kind of am neither here nor there. It literally just rolls right off me, because I recognize now that's their stuff, not my stuff. And there's no doubt in my mind anymore that I am walking in a God-given calling. Blessing that God has created motherhood. God is the one who gives us these children. God has anointed us to be able to homeschool and to disciple and train our children. And I'm so grateful that I don't let other people's stuff get me down anymore, right? So if you're struggling with that and you would like some assistance in that, I've got a guide, a free guide available on my website, TaraLeeHills.com. That is, I put it together. It's called a Guide for Christian Women Overcoming Fear, something like that. I think I'm messing up the name, but that's the point. It's at the bottom on the homepage. It's literally the process that I take when I'm dealing with fear. When other people's opinions hit me or my own inside stuff gets stirred up and I'm like, oh my goodness, how will I be able to walk the road? Am I really wasting my life? And here, I'll give you one quick little thing before I went. One of the verses that God brought me to when I was really like, am I going to waste my life and lose myself in motherhood? He reminded me of the woman who came to Jesus and broke the alabaster jar. You might be familiar with it. And this was like really expensive stuff. From what I've heard, like it was worth multiple thousands of dollars, the equivalent of a dowry at the time. So a really big deal. And she broke it on Jesus's feet and just anointed him with this very expensive nard, I believe it was called. So it's like a really expensive perfume. And I mean, you know how expensive little bottles of like Chanel and stuff can be now. I mean, I just buy my stuff from Walmart, but I know a perfume can be expensive. And the disciples were like, ah, what a waste, right? What a waste. She could have done so much more good with that money. I mean, she was just going to throw it on the ground. And Jesus says she's done a beautiful thing. And she would be spoken of for like the rest of time. So that really encouraged me as a mom, that when other people think I'm wasting my life as a stay-at-home big family, truth. So I'm going to let God tell me what he thinks of me, because he's the one, right? I should be keeping my eyes on. That's what's going to keep me on the road. That's what's going to allow me to overcome challenges, especially the ones that are inside of me, which are usually the hardest ones of all. That's what I've got for you today. I hope that blessed you and encouraged you. Like I said, check out that free guide if you would like. If that would be a blessing to you, it's the steps that I take to deal with fear when it's just starting to overwhelm me and keep me up at night and affect my health. You know what I mean? So that's there to be a blessing to you. Thank you for meeting with me today. I see I've got a couple of comments. I'm going to just check real quick in the chat before I go. Ooh, this is a really good discussion. It's this Facebook user. I can't see who's actually talking. I think I'd have to go on my actual page. I'm still figuring out the tech of this, guys, so bear with me. I just want to see who's saying hi. Oh, there's Rolling Mary. Good morning, Rolling Mary. Mariana, good to see you. And this is a discussion near and dear to my heart, and it's something I'm glad we can talk about in this forum because it's important, right? A stay-at-home big family, homeschool moms can be kind of isolated. Motherhood can be very isolating, especially stay-at-home motherhood. So I'm glad that I can be a blessing to others in this. So thank you so much for meeting with me. I'm going to sign off here because I've talked long enough. I will see you all on Monday. I've got some really good topics on my heart. By special request, I've been asked to talk about controlling anger. And speak to you with, sensitivity and grace. So we'll look at some scriptures and I'll give you some practical advice and some biblical encouragement to help you walk the road of embracing children with joy and confidence. Until then, God bless you this weekend. I'll see you next week.